In the United States, 20% of the workforce is functionally illiterate. This lack of skill contributes to a net cost of crime that drains an estimated $1.3 trillion from the economy every year. This drain is intensifying as the labor pool shifts. The U.S. is currently adding fewer college graduates to its workforce than in previous decades, creating a structural shortage of high-level skills. To address these deficits, policymakers rely on a standard set of retroactive tools: public job training, adult literacy campaigns, and convict rehabilitation programs. However, the empirical track record for these interventions is poor. They rarely produce the gains in literacy or employment needed to offset their public costs. Attempting to fix social and economic disparities after they have fully developed is proving to be an inefficient use of national resources. American educational and social policy is built on the framework of a second-chance society. This model is based on the belief that human ability remains highly malleable well into adulthood, and that targeted spending can overwrite years of prior disadvantage. That belief is increasingly at odds with the biological reality of human brain development. Research in neuroscience and psychology shows that the mastery of complex skills follows a strict hierarchy. By the time society attempts to compensate for a poor early environment through adolescent or adult programs, the most sensitive periods for developing foundational neural circuits have passed. This suggests that long-term productivity and economic outcomes are established much earlier in the life cycle than current policy assumes. Addressing these inefficiencies requires looking past the second-chance model to the earliest stages of the life cycle, where the architecture of skill is actually established. Public debates often focus on the formal K-12 education system as the primary equalizer of opportunity. But if we look at when achievement gaps actually emerge, a different pattern appears. This chart displays data from the Peabody Individual Achievement Test, plotting Rath score percentiles across 4 family income quartiles. It tracks the performance of these children starting at age 6 and following them through age 12. At the moment these students enter the school system, a massive disparity is already present. Children from the highest income quartile sit near the 60th percentile, while those from the lowest sit near the 40th. Over the next 6 years of formal schooling, these lines move nearly perfectly in parallel. The gaps that were present on the first day of kindergarten do not significantly narrow. These parallel trajectories suggest that the formal education system is primarily managing a gap it did not create. Research, including the landmark Coleman Report, indicates that family environments are the major sources of inequality in student performance, rather than variations in school quality. We have to ask why the early environment is such a powerful predictor of a child's future. The answer lies in the process of dynamic skill formation. This is the principle that early mastery makes later learning more efficient. Later attainments build directly on foundations laid down in the preschool years. Public policy often focuses exclusively on cognitive skills, metrics like IQ and standardized test scores, as the only measure of success.
But non-cognitive skills, such as motivation, perseverance, and emotional competency, are equally vital. These traits power the ability to absorb cognitive information. Early non-cognitive stimulation acts as a multiplier. By developing motivation and tenacity early on, a child becomes more receptive to all subsequent formal education. The Perry Preschool program provides an empirical test for this model of skill formation. This was a 2-year experimental intervention in the 1960s, targeting disadvantaged 3 to 4-year-old children through morning school programs and home visits. By age 10, the children in the program had IQ scores no higher than the control group. Under standard cognitive metrics, the program appeared to have failed. Yet, follow-up studies at age 40 revealed that the treated group had higher high school graduation rates, earned higher salaries, and significantly fewer arrests. The program succeeded not by raising raw intelligence, but by developing the non-cognitive motivation and tenacity required for long-term economic stability. This data allows us to visualize the efficiency of human capital investment across a person's entire lifespan. This is the rate of return to human capital investment curve. The payout per dollar invested is at its highest in the preschool years and drops as a person ages. Because early inputs affect the productivity of later inputs, the returns on investment diminish over time. The horizontal line R represents the opportunity cost of funds, the return the government would get by simply investing that money in financial assets instead. On the far right, the curve for late-stage programs like adult job training dips below this baseline. At this stage, the investment is no longer generating a return that exceeds the opportunity cost of funds. Waiting until adolescents to fund remedial programs is a mathematical misallocation of capital. It directs resources toward the point in the life cycle where they are least effective. We can contrast the low returns of late-stage programs with the specific payout of the peri-preschool intervention. The total input cost per child was $16,514. Over the participant's life, that investment generated a total benefit of $144,345. Most of this return came from societal savings. Over $94,000 of that benefit is attributed strictly to the reduced costs of crime. This equates to an annual rate of return of 15 to 17%, a yield that outpaces many traditional financial assets. The data suggests these early interventions function as high-yield capital investments rather than social transfers. For policies targeting young adults, there is a documented trade-off between social equity and economic efficiency. For programs targeting disadvantaged young children, this trade-off disappears. Equity and efficiency are perfectly aligned. Despite this, the majority of current resources are directed toward late-stage remedial programs, while early childhood remains underinvested. To maximize workforce capability, these early investments must be followed by quality schooling. The early push creates the foundation, and later education sustains the momentum. If a nation wants to optimize its human capital and address the trillion-dollar costs of social pathology, its economic policy must finally align with the biological reality of how skills are